Hello folks, IPMAT. Anyone who's thinking about IPMAT, you're thinking about IPMAT, Rohtak and Indore, 3 different exams. Course from 2 IM starts on March 31, 6 hours per day, big sprint till April 21 and then a bunch of mocks. Sign up, best wishes.
Let's look at the next set of questions. They are common instructions. Let's read the instructions first. Some of the sentences below have words that are missing. Choose the best option from those given below to complete. Okay, so the instructions are straightforward. These questions have multiple blanks, and the idea is to choose an option which has words that best complete the sentence that they've given to you. So these questions mainly test vocabulary. Okay, and the good thing is that these aren't direct vocabulary questions. There are sentences, so you can always guess the blanks, even if you don't know the meaning of a particular word. You can guess it through context. Okay, so yeah, vocabulary, word usage questions, that's the category. Let's look at question 1. Dash have to label their dash posts in order to bring about transparency and dash the interest of the customers. Okay, now there are multiple blanks here. You don't have to go in a particular sequence. Now, before even looking at the options, ask yourself if you can make some guesses on your own. Again, you don't have to make elaborate guesses. Broad guesses are absolutely fine. Don't spend too much time. Spend a few seconds just making quick guesses. If something clicks, keep that in mind. If you're able to make a guess, a logical guess, that can help you when you look at the options. The options won't confuse you as much. If you go to the options directly, they might confuse you. So here it says dash have to label their dash. Now the fact that there is there here, this is some kind of entity. Okay, so somebody has to label their dash posts. Now the moment you hear about posts, you probably think of social media or blog posts, right? This is how we make guesses in order to bring about transparency and dash the interest of the customers. Now, since we're talking about transparency, this will most likely be in favor of the customers. This blank will most likely be in favor of customers because we're talking about transparency. And usually when we say dash the interest of the customers, the first thing that might have come into your head is protect the interest of customers. And that goes very well because we're talking about transparency. So this is how we've made guesses, right? We were able to make some sort of broad guess that this will be an entity. This can probably be related to social media or blogging. And this might be related to product. Okay. Now, when we look at these 3 blanks, the strongest guess that I have is the 3rd blank. So I'll start with that. Okay. And I'll see if I can pick an option. So it says, and safeguard the interest of the customers. That seems like a very good option. Okay. Because protect is the guess that we came up with. Safeguard is very close to that. So this looks like a good option. And incite the interest of the customers. This does not make sense. Okay. Incite is a negative word. Incite means stirring up something, encouraging something, but something usually which is negative, like violent or unlawful behavior. Okay. So inciting riots, right? So incite is a negative word. It won't fit here. So we can eliminate this option. Multiply the interest. That does not make sense. You don't multiply interest. Capture the interest of customers, that makes sense. That might be the case. Okay. All right. Let's go to the 2nd blank because we had another guess there. Social media or blogging. Promotional. That makes sense. You have promotional posts which are like, you post them on social media. It can even be advertising. So promotional posts make sense. And then we have commercial posts. So have to label their commercials posts. Now look at this. It says commercials. Have to label their commercials posts does not make sense. It's just wrong grammar. Okay. So most likely the answer is 1, but we'll quickly go to the 1st blank as well. Influencers have to label the promotional post, makes perfect sense. Advertisers have to label their commercials post. Advertisers maybe, but commercials doesn't make sense. So 1 is definitely the best answer. Okay. All right. So as you saw, like I read the sentence, started making broad guesses. Then I went in the order of the blank. So wherever I have the strongest guess, tackle that blank first and then go in reverse order. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next one. Working from home requires that you may have to put your dash life on dash. Okay. Now here you can make a broad guess. Working from home requires that you may have to put your dash life. So maybe personal life. We're talking about working, right? So maybe it's saying that you have to prioritize work and put your personal life on hold. That could be a guess. Some people find this very dash as they like to keep their work and home life separate. Now here, think about it. Will this be a positive word or a negative word or a neutral word? most likely this will be a negative word because we're talking about probably putting personal life on hold. Okay. And that, if somebody likes to keep their work and home life separate, might find that negative. So this is most likely a negative word. Okay. Again, remember, these are guesses. So we're not able to, let's say if we're not able to make a guess about the word, you can at least think of the connotation. What is the vibe of the word? Positive, negative, or neutral. Okay. So there are 3 blanks. This seemed like a strong guess, personal life. Let's look at that. Put your dash life. So actual life. That doesn't make sense. Actual life, what do we mean by that? Okay. Working from home requires that you may have to put your actual life. That doesn't make sense. Work is also a part of life. So we can eliminate this. You may have to put your private life. Okay. Private life on screen. And then it says some people find this very disconcerting. Disconcerting is uncomfortable. That actually makes sense. Now, see, the guesses that I made didn't really fit here because those were guesses. But that you may have to put your private life on screen makes sense. And disconcerting also makes sense. It is negative. Disconcerting is a negative word. So our guesses help us go in a certain direction, but you have to be flexible. Okay. So put your personal life on hold might have made sense, but the sentence is going in another direction. Private life on screen. Okay. That makes sense because we're working from home and you're on like VCs or video meetings or video conference meetings or Zoom. The other person might be able to see your personal life on the screen, which is weird. And some people might find that disconcerting. Okay. So this looks like a good option. We'll park it. Working from home requires that you may have to put your family life on microscope. That does not make sense. What does that even mean? Okay. Microscope does not make sense. All right. Working from home requires that you may have to put your entire life on camera. Entire life on camera also does not make sense. Right? Just because you're working from home, that doesn't mean your entire life is on camera. That's a little absurd, right? Because your life is much more beyond your home and your work. When you go outside, you hang out. So entire life does not make sense. Okay, in the context. The only option that makes sense is private life on screen, and some people find this very disconcerting. This can be a little tricky question. Okay, but the only option that works is 2. Let's go to 3. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay. In its early stages, dementia is often dashed from normal aging, in which the older brain may naturally begin to show signs of cognitive impairment. Okay. Neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently dashed, though they may be slowed through diet, exercise, and keeping the mind agile with social and intellectual activity. So it's talking about dementia, right? Dementia is memory loss. Now, the second one says neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently dashed, though it can be slowed down. That's what the sentence is saying. So probably this could be curable, right? That means you can't cure dementia or cognitive aging, but you can slow it down. You can slow down the worsening of dementia or cognitive aging. So this could be curable. That's a guess that we're making. The first blank, not really sure, so we leave it. The only guess that we have is for the second blank. Let's look at the options. Reversible. That makes sense. Neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently reversible, but you can slow it down. So we guessed curable. This is different, but reversible also makes sense. Let's park it. Neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently manageable, but they may be slowed through diet. That doesn't make sense. The fact that you're able to slow it down, you are also managing that condition. You're slowing down the progression of a disease. You're managing it. So saying that it is not manageable and then talking about slowing down, it's contradictory. So it won't make sense. Neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently visible, though they may be slowed down. That doesn't make sense. Visible doesn't go well with slowed through diet. So we can remove this. Neither dementia nor cognitive aging is currently permanent, though they may be slowed through diet. That also doesn't make sense. If they're not permanent, then why are we only talking about slowing down? If they're not permanent, maybe we can talk about cure as well. Doesn't really fit. Okay, so we can eliminate that. Now here in this case, if you look at this, in its early stages, dementia is often indistinguishable from normal aging, in which the older brain may naturally begin to show signs. So that means in the early stages, dementia seems very similar to normal aging, or it looks like normal aging. Okay, in the early stages. So it's indistinguishable in the early stages, and then we talk about reversible. So the only option that works here is 1. It is a slightly tricky question, but if you look at it carefully, analyze it, you can potentially get this right. Okay, not very tricky, but slightly tricky. Let's look at the fourth one. The culture of the 21st century on an increasingly dash scale is oriented around the practical principles of utility, effectiveness, and impact. So understand this sentence. It's talking about the culture of the 21st century being very practical in nature. Okay, so the culture prioritizes utility, whether this thing is useful, whether this thing is effective, prioritizes things that are useful, effective, and have a high impact. So very, very practical in nature. Things are good to the extent that they're instrumental, with instrumentality usually defined as the capacity to produce money or things. Okay, so again, the practical nature of it. A thing is considered good if it has the capacity to produce money or things. Okay, so again, very, very practical approach to the culture. The culture prioritizes things that are useful in terms of producing money or things, effective, and have a high impact as well. The worth of anything, an idea, an activity, an artwork, a dash with another person is determined dash. Okay, so understand the broader paragraph. It's talking about the culture of 21st century being very practical. Okay, valuing things that have the capacity to produce money or things, and everything is evaluated like that. The worth of anything is evaluated like that. So an idea, an activity, an artwork, a dash with another person. Now think about it. It says a dash with another person. What could that be? It could be anything. I mean, I did guess when I looked at this question for the first time, I did guess something, but I don't want to give that because that would give the answer away. But it could be you're thinking about a connection with another person, right? If you're saying another person, it could be connection, something like that. Is determined dash. Remember the practical part of it. Okay, this one you might not be able to guess. So let's go to the options now. We have some sort of a sense here, which is connection. So let's look at the second blank. A relationship with another person. That makes sense. Okay, even a relationship with another person is looked through a practical lens. So this makes sense. A dinner with another person. That doesn't make sense. We're talking about culture. Suddenly, how is dinner coming into picture, right? A dialogue with another person. This could make sense. Okay. A conversation with another person. This could make sense as well. All right. Okay. Let's look at it. Let's dash with another person. So a relationship with another person is determined pragmatically. Now, what does pragmatic mean? Pragmatically means practically. If you're pragmatic in nature, you're very practical in nature. So actually, pragmatically beautifully fits with the discussion here. That the culture is very practical in nature. So even a relationship with another person is determined pragmatically. Okay. Now let's look at the first blank. On an increasingly global scale. That makes sense as well. So the culture on an increasingly global scale. So culture of the 21st century, and this applies to pretty much the entire globe. So pretty much all the culture in the globe, look at it in a practical nature. All the three blanks make sense, but we have other options. We'll look at that. On an increasingly conspicuous scale, this doesn't make sense. Conspicuous is visible. Okay, conspicuous scale does not make any sense at all. On an ordinal scale, does not make any sense at all. Okay, we're not talking about like the scale as in the measurement scale literally. Ordinal is order or sequence. Okay, so ordinal here does not make any sense at all. So we're going to eliminate that as well. Global relationship pragmatically makes perfect sense, and that is our answer. Okay, if you want to look at the other blanks, apart from ordinal, we have imaginatively, which is also wrong. Imaginatively is opposite of practicality. Sort of. Okay, so pragmatically fits beautifully there. Hence, the answer is 1. So, a bit of a tricky question. Okay. All right, let's look at question 5. The human resource chief said that the company will not dash on investing in people and has dashed spending on employee needs in order to dash them and provide them with a sense of stability and certainty. Now, see, understand this sentence. It is talking in favor of employees. The human resource chief is trying to provide employees with a sense of stability and certainty. So it's in favor of employees. So whatever policy this human resource chief is coming up with, it's going to be in favor of employees. This whole sentence seems to have a positive view or perspective towards employees. Keep that in mind. So spending on employee needs in order to dash them. Now it's positive, so this has to be a positive word. Okay, so it could be protect in order to protect them, has to be positive. Okay, so let's look at that first. In order to confront them, that doesn't make sense. Confront is negative, does not fit the context at all. In order to reassure them, and provide them with a sense of stability and certainty, that makes sense. Okay, you're reassuring them, and sense of stability and certainty goes very well with that. So let's park it. In order to empower them, that makes sense as well. In order to include them and provide them with a sense of stability and certainty, that doesn't really make sense here. Include with the stability and certainty doesn't really go well. So we're going to eliminate it or park it if you want, because it kind of fits, but not really. Let's look at the other blanks. The human resource chief said the company will not dash on investing in people. Now think about it. This is in favor of people. So that means the human resource chief is probably saying that they will continue to invest in people. Now, because we have not, it might be will not, we can't say stop on investing, but will not hesitate on investing in people. But that also seems wrong. You can't have hesitate on, it has to be hesitate to. But a broad guess here is that this is in favor of people and has dash spending on employee needs. So it could be, this is also positive, it could increase spending. Because they're focusing on employees, it could increase spending. Okay, let's look at the other two blanks. So the second blank, we have a stronger guess because we said it could be has increased spending on people, employees, because it's in favor of employees. So let's look at the second blank first. Has assured spending on employee needs. Okay, this could fit, but this is already eliminated. So we're not even considering that. Has prioritized spending on employee needs. Yeah, this fits. Okay, so we'll retain this. Has assured spending on employee needs. Okay, this continues to, this is okay. Has compromised spending. This will not fit. We are talking about increasing spending because it's favor of employees. So compromised spending means it has decreased spending, which does not make sense, doesn't go with the context. We were already doubtful about include, and now compromise seals the deal. We're going to eliminate that option. So we're left with two. Okay, so prioritize, reassure, assured, empower. Let's look at the first one. The human resource chief said that the company will not compromise on spending. Absolutely perfect. They are not going to compromise on spending. That means they're not going to reduce spending. They're going to focus on spending on employees. This fits. Will not delay on investing in people. Now look at this. You have compromise, prioritized, reassure. Here it says delay, assured, empower. Two seems to be a much better fit. Now read it and you'll understand. Will not compromise on investing in people and has prioritized spending, and they're reassuring them with a sense of stability and certainty. Between reassure and empower, because we are talking about sense of stability and certainty, reassure is a much better fit than empower. Okay, and also delay doesn't completely fit there. We're not talking about delay here. We're talking about focusing on spending and making sure they prioritize spending and not reduce. There's no time factor involved here. So that's why we can eliminate 3. The answer is 2. All right. This is also a bit of a tricky question. Let's look at question 6. In the alleyways of old Cairo, in its cafes, warehouses, and barber shops, framed portraits of Egyptian icons are dashed. Okay, so if we're talking about framed portraits of Egyptian icons in cafes, they're probably hung on the wall. They're probably put up on the wall, right? That could be a guess. Kings, presidents, religious and political figures are all dashed on fading walls, held up as symbols of a glorious past. So again, this kings, presidents, religious and political figures is connected to these framed portraits of Egyptian icons. These are icons, kings, presidents, religious and political figures. So are all, again, probably hanging on fading walls, held up as symbols of a glorious past. So hanging is something that you can think of, but let's go to the options now. Framed portraits of Egyptian icons are ubiquitous. Okay, ubiquitous means present everywhere. That goes well. Okay, in the alleyways, everywhere, cafes, warehouses, and barber shops, framed portraits are ubiquitous. That means they are present everywhere. Kings, presidents, religious and political figures are all immortalized on fading walls. Because their portraits are there, you can say they are immortalized because they are in the minds of everyone, right? People are putting up their portraits everywhere as a mark of respect, as a mark of honor So you can say they have been immortalized through those portraits. Okay, excuse me. This seems like a good fit. All right, let's look at that. Are fashionable. Framed portraits of Egyptian icons are fashionable. That does not make sense. And confounded means puzzled, which does not fit the second blank at all. It's gone. Framed portraits of Egyptian icons are rare. That does not make sense. We are talking about those portraits being present everywhere. So rare is actually opposite of what we're looking for. Framed portraits of Egyptian icons are substantial. Framed portraits being substantial doesn't really make sense. It doesn't go well. And then kings, presidents, religious and political figures are all dispersed on fading poles. No, we need a positive word here. So ubiquitous and then immortalized makes perfect sense. So that is the answer. Now here the tricky thing is you have to know the meaning of ubiquitous, or you should be sure of eliminating 2, 3 and 4. Okay, but yeah, even with that, I think you will, to sort of not take an unreasonable amount of risk, you would need to know the meaning of ubiquitous. So it's obviously a vocabulary test as well, right?
Hello folks, those of you who are thinking about IPMAT, the integrated 5-year course, you've got to think about it seriously. Parents who are listening in, you have to plan for this. After 12th standard board exams get over, there are a ton of exams. This IPMAT integrated course is a brilliant course. It's a 5-year course. Anyone who's interested in MBA, anyone who's saying, look, I don't want to do the mainstream thing, but I want to do something compellingly good, you must take this as part of your structure, as part of your set of options available. The number of seats is not too high, so you cannot say this is my only option, but you have to say, hey, I'm giving this a go. The exams to write, very clearly, these 3. On GIPMAT is on April 26th. IPMAT for Rohtak is on May 5th. Indore is for May 12th. This is the simplest exam. This is the toughest exam. So be a nice gradation. You have to prepare for it. It's not a bleeding obvious exam that you can just go and wing it. There's also data interpretation, logical reasoning section. We guys have a course for it, which covers a bunch of live sessions. We'll be doing 6 hours of live sessions for 3.5 weeks as a run up to the exam. Bunch of mocks that we will administer to them and discuss and help and mentor and plan all of that with detailed video solutions. Whatever we do, we'll have detailed video solution for the previous year papers. We'll discuss them also in great detail. Come up with a good strategy for them to attack this. And the young kids, will do our best to help them take this exam, help the students take this exam. All of this included. The course begins the kind of almost immediately after the board exam ends. So it's on March 31st. So details of the course, how to sign up, when to pay, all of those are available in the description. Check that out, sign up and have fun. Best wishes.
Let's look at these next set of questions which have common instructions. We'll read the instructions first. One of the statements below contains a word used incorrectly or inappropriately. Choose the option which has the incorrect or... Oh, okay, I'm going to start again. Sorry, we confused the correct. I just got confused. Let's look at these next set of questions which have common instructions. We'll read the instructions first. One of the statements below contains a word used incorrectly or inappropriately. Choose the option which has the incorrect or inappropriate usage of the word. So typically in these questions, they'll give you 4 options, and then there will be a common word in the 4 options. Let me start again. Let's look at these next set of questions. We'll read the instructions first. One of the statements below contains a word used incorrectly or inappropriately. Choose the option which has the incorrect or inappropriate usage of the word. So this is again testing word usage, and typically in these questions they use commonly confusing words. Okay, there are many words in English which are commonly confused. Like for instance, affect versus effect, right? Or you can take censure versus censor, right? There are so many words like that which are commonly confused. Lose versus lose. So you have a single O and a double O, right? So they typically can try to confuse you with such words. 3 out of the 4 options will use that word correctly. 1 will have an inappropriate or incorrect usage, and you have to point that out. Okay, so let's look at the first question. Option 1 says the musician would hear a chord in his head and play each note individually. Now see, in these 4 options, typically there will be a common word. So first what you should do is quickly scan the 4 options and identify that common word. And then you'll know what word you want to, what word you need to focus on. So musicians would hear a chord in his head and play each note individually. Teenagers may feel a need to cut the umbilical cord. So now we know that cord and cord is common. Similarly, you'll see there is a cord here and there is cord here. So this is the word that we have to focus on. And one of the options will use cord incorrectly. So let's look at that. The musician would hear a cord in his head and play each note individually. This is actually incorrect. When you are using it with reference to music, it has to be chord, which is a group or collection of notes. So in relation to music, it has to be chord. So this is actually incorrect. We'll park it. Teenagers may feel a need to cut the umbilical cord. This is absolutely fine. To keep the keys safe, she wore it on a cord around her neck. Now, this may not be a this may not be common usage, but this is correct because cord here means a string or a rope. So she tied a string or a rope around her neck and then tied the key to it. So this is fine. He purchased a cord of wood from the market. Now, this is also not common at all, but cord of wood is correct because cord of wood or cord of wood is a measurement unit for wood. Okay, so cord of wood means, some sort of quantity of wood. It's a measurement of unit that we use for wood. So not common usage, but this is absolutely correct. The one that is wrong is number one because it should be chord. Okay. Now it's a tricky question because there are two options with uncommon usage. But in this case, if let's say you look at one and you're very sure that one is wrong, then you can take a risk with this. Even though you don't understand 3 and 4, again, you have to take a reasonable amount of risk. I'm saying that you're very sure, 100% sure that the answer is 1. Even if you don't understand 3 and 4, you can take a risk with 1. Okay, right. All right, let's go to question 2. To catch the terrorist, the security forces formed a ring around the house where he was hiding. So first we try to spot the common word. They were all soaking wet and their mother told them to wring their clothes. Now you can see that ring, and then here also there is ring, and here also there is ring. So that's what we have to focus on. So catch the terrorist, the security forces formed a ring around the house where he was hiding. This seems fine. They kind of surrounded the house. They were all soaking wet and the mother told them to wring their clothes first and then put them out to dry. Now, wring their clothes. Is it wring their clothes? Is spelling correct? First of all, what is wring their clothes? Wring meaning squeezing the clothes. That's what we typically do, right? Before hanging the clothes to dry or putting the clothes to dry, we typically, especially in India, we wring it. Okay? I mean, we use nowadays we have like washer and dryer, but if you're sort of drying it out in the sun, you will typically wring it, squeeze it to take the water out and then put them to dry. But it's not R-I-N-G. The spelling for that is W-R-I-N-G. Okay? To which waved the hand, recited a magical verse, pressed the blue stone on a ring. This is absolutely correct. We're going to park this. She had left home for the first time, so parents made a promise that she would ring them up every day. Ring them up means call them up. So although 2 might be a little tricky, it's fairly manageable to eliminate 1, 3, and 4. So again, if you're very sure that 1, 3, and 4 can be eliminated, you can take a slight risk and go with 2, and that is indeed the answer. Okay, let's look at question 3. Under certain climatic conditions, hailstorms are formed in the atmosphere, resulting in unexpected accidents. Our products have to function in extreme weather conditions, which is why we put them through climatic testing. Now, you can quickly see it is climatic, which is common. Okay. Now, the first 2 statements are talking about weather in relation with weather. So, climatic is absolutely correct. When you're saying climatic, C-L-I-M-A-T-I-C, it's connected to weather. So, 1 and 2 is correct. 3 also talks about weather because it's saying sweating profusely. The passengers in the bus were sweating profusely because of the hot climatic conditions. So this is also correct. The climatic moment of the match was when the captain got caught behind the wicket. Here we're not talking about weather. We're talking about climax. Okay. So when you're talking about climax, you have to use climactic. Sorry, I'll write it again. Climactic. That's climatic. The first one without a C after A. Here you have a C after A, so it's climactic. So this is connected to weather, climatic. Climax is connected to climactic. Okay, so therefore this is wrong. This should be climactic. Okay, a commonly confused word. So the answer, sorry, this is not wrong. This is the correct answer because we're looking for incorrectly or inappropriately used word. So this is wrong. 2, 3, 4 is the answer. Okay, and that you can see it here. So remember that climatic versus climactic. Climatic is weather, climactic is climax. Let's look at question 4. It was a full moon night and the tide was high, but he went boating and unfortunately he drowned. All right, let's find out the common word first. The bags placed on the carrier were not securely tied. Okay, so we can see it's tied. Here also we have tide, and here also we have tide. Now the first sentence says it was a full moon night and the tide was high. They're referring to tides of waves in the sea, right? High tide, low tide. So because if it's a full moon night, it's a high tide. If it's a waning moon, it's low tide. So here it is, when you're talking about a tide in the sea, the spelling is tide, T-I-D-E, not T-I-E-D. Okay, this is nothing to do with time. This is sea tide, so T-I-D-E. So this will park it. The bags placed on the carrier were not securely tied. This is fine. After many years of knowing one another, they eventually tied the knot. Tied the knot is a phrase that means they got married. I have a good chance of a promotion since my firm has recently tied up with a global conglomerate. Tied up here means partnering. So their firm has recently partnered with a global conglomerate. So this is absolutely correct. The answer is 1 because it should be TIDE. Okay, let's look at question 5. The politician was so flustered by the animosity of the crowd that he refused to answer further questions. Okay, let's look at the common word. I lived farther away. Okay, so we have further and farther. Here you have father and here you have further. Now let's look at the difference. What is farther and what is further? This is again very commonly confused pair of words in English. Farther, F-A-R-T-H-E-R, is physical distance. Whenever you're talking about physical distance, it is farther. Further is also distance, but it's not physical. Okay, it is metaphorical distance or figurative distance. All right, or you can say extend, to the extent. Further is to the extent. Okay, so you can write down that as well. But the best way to remember this is farther with an A is physical distance, further is metaphorical, figurative distance, symbolic distance, not actual physical distance, but symbolic. Okay. The politician was so flustered by the animosity of the crowd that he refused to answer further questions. Further is fine. Here we're not talking about physical distance, we're talking about metaphorical distance. So this is fine. Refuse to answer further questions. That means refuse to answer any more questions. This is correct. I live farther away from college than all my classmates. Clearly, you're talking about physical distance here. Okay, so this is farther is absolutely correct. If you need to further your career, you should avoid all kinds of distractions. Are we talking about physical distance here? Absolutely not. We're not talking about a physical distance between your career. It doesn't make sense. So we're talking about a symbolic distance. If you need to grow your career, advance your career, we're talking about a symbolic distance, not physical. There's no kilometers, miles here, right? We're talking about extent or growth of career. So here we can't use farther because that's physical. It should be further. Okay, we park it. We need to discuss this problem right away and avoid letting it fester any further. This is absolutely correct. We're not talking about physical distance. We're talking about not avoid letting it fester anymore. So again, figurative distance, further is correct. 3 is the answer because here we should be using further and not farther because there is no physical distance. Okay, the correct answer is 3. All right, I won't repeat. Anyway, I'll remove that so you can see the answer, but it is indeed 3. Let's look at question 6. When the witness was summoned by the lawyer, he made grave allegations against the accused. Let's look at the common word. The landlord issued a warning to the tenants that non-payment of rent was a grave matter. Okay, so we have grave, we have grave, and we have grave. Okay, let's look at it. So he made grave allegations against the accused. This is fine. He made very serious allegations, extremely serious allegations. That's what grave means. The landlord issued a warning to the tenants that non-payment of rent was a very serious matter, was a grave matter. This is correct. They found that all the flowers placed on their mother's grave, we are talking about the physical grave, so this is correct. The pet dog could not come to terms with his master's death and went to grave for him, even refusing to eat for several days. This does not make sense. Went to grave for him does not make sense. They probably mean to say they went and went to grieve for her. Okay. The pet dog could not come to terms with his master's death and went to grieve for him. The pet dog was sad. Or if you want to switch up the sentence a little bit, went to his grave. That could be the case as well. But mostly they mean to use grieve here, I think. They're trying to confuse you with grave and grieve. Okay, so here you can't use grave, and therefore this is the correct answer. All right. Let's look at the set of questions, which were essentially parajumble questions. Parajumble questions appear very often in IPMAT Indore exams. Pretty much every year we've seen parajumble questions. There were about 5 questions in IPMAT 2023. Now we'll read the instructions quickly first, and of course the common instructions will apply to all the 5 questions. Sentences given below, when properly sequenced, form a coherent paragraph. Each sentence is labeled with a number. Decide on the most logical order and enter the sequence of numbers in the space provided. So that means it was a theta question. Type in the answer. There were no choices. You had to type in the answer in the space provided. Only numbers are to be entered in the space provided for the answer, and no letters, characters, or spaces should be entered. For example, a response such as 3412 is valid, and responses such as 3412 dot or 3 with a space 412 are invalid. So the instructions are pretty straightforward. Make sure that when you're typing in the answer, only type numbers without anything else, without any spaces, no letters, no characters, nothing, only numbers. Okay, otherwise that answer will not be accepted by the system and you won't get any marks for it, even if it is correct. Okay, so they have given you 4 sentences which have been taken out of a paragraph. They've jumbled up the sentences and give it to you. Your job is to put them in the correct order so that the paragraph makes sense. Okay, so they are a part of a paragraph, but they will be jumbled up. So it's like a puzzle that you have to solve, put them in the correct order, 4, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, whatever that is. And the paragraph has to flow very smoothly. So the most important part in parajumbles is once you figure out your answer, the flow of the sentences, all the 4 sentences of the paragraph should be very smooth. If you notice any, if you see that, okay, while reading, if you see any abruptness, that means that's an indicator that your answer is not right, and probably you'll have to change your combination. So the flow of the paragraph, the flow of ideas in the paragraph is the most important. Okay, so let's see how we can solve question 1. We'll start with the first sentence. But the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. Now the sentence starts with but. So it's very unlikely that it will be a starter statement. When you're looking at these sentences first, the first thing is to identify what is the starter statement. Sometimes you'll be able to identify the starter statement, sometimes not, but you should always try, because if you're able to identify the starter statement, your job will become easier. So, but the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this, but clearly tells us that there has to be a sentence before this. But is the transition word. It connects 2 sentences, contrasting sentences. So there has to be something before but. This can't be the starter statement. Instead of going against their heroic leader, the sepoys attacked the British soldiers and managed to escape from the town. Now, when you're reading a sentence, if a question pops up in your head, something like, who is there? It says, against their heroic leader. Who is there? Now, you have to ask yourself, does this sentence, number 2, answer that question? If it answers the question, it's fine. If it doesn't answer the question, this indicates that there has to be a sentence before this. Now, ask yourself, who is there? Is that question answered in the sentence? In this sentence, it is, right? Because it says, instead of going against their heroic leader, the sepoys. So there means the sepoys. So there are sentences like this, where the question that pops up in your head will be answered in the sentence itself. If it is answered in the sentence, then it can be a starter statement. Okay, so just because it has there is not reason enough for you to say that this can't be a starter statement, because that question is answered in the sentence itself. But let's ask ourselves again, can this be a starter statement? When you read the sentence, it doesn't look like a starter statement, doesn't seem like a starter statement. Instead of going against their heroic leader, the sepoys attacked the British soldiers and managed to escape from the town. There seems to be some story that has to come before this. The sentence doesn't seem like a proper starter statement, but we'll park it. We'll write an S, okay, to see if there's a better candidate for a starter statement. We'll go with that. Otherwise, we'll choose this one, but it's unlikely. Let's look at number 3. The Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 in the garrison town of Meerut is regarded as the first war of independence. Now, can this be a starter statement? It's a good candidate. It is an introductory statement. It is a generic statement. It doesn't have any pronouns. These are the typical characteristics of a starter statement. You can think about it. A paragraph can start with this. Introducing Sepoy Mutiny to you. Of 1857, mentioning the year, where did it happen, and it is regarded as the first war of independence. So it's a good introductory statement. Between 2 and 3, definitely 3 is a better candidate. So I'm going to scratch this and say S here. Let's look at 4. It happened in 1780 when the British officers asked the local sepoys to join the fight against Hyder Ali. Now, the question that will pop up into your head is, what is it? And that is not answered in this sentence. So that means this is an indicator that there is a sentence before 4. This can't be a starter statement. So now we know that 3 is definitely a starter statement. Okay. Right? 3 is a starter statement. Now the next step is, once you've identified the starter statement, ask yourself what is the most obvious pair, or what is the most obvious link. Pair and link, I mean 2 sentences which come attached to each other. So ask yourself, what is the most obvious one? Go with the most obvious one. So let's look at this. It says, but the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. Now, but is a contrasting transition word. The sentence is saying the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. So what is this? Something happened, okay, and we are saying the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. So what is this? Let's try to figure out. It says the Sepoy Mutiny of 1857 in the garrison town of Meerut is regarded as the first war of independence. But the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. That means mutiny of Visakhapatnam happened before 1857. That makes sense, right? That's a obvious pair. So 3-1 seems to be a good pair. Okay, let's continue. But the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates this. Now 4 says it happened in 1780 when the British officers asked the local sepoys to join the fight against Hyder Ali. This makes complete sense. Because if we're saying the mutiny of Visakhapatnam predates 1857, it has to be an earlier date. So here the it is referring to mutiny of Visakhapatnam. So 3-1-4 is a good sequence. Let's see if 2 fits after that. Instead of going against their heroic leader, the sepoys attacked the British soldiers and managed to escape from the town. 2 is elaborating on 4. 4 says the British officers asked the local sepoys to join the fight against Hyder Ali. 1 says, instead of going against their heroic leader, that means Hyder Ali was their heroic leader. Instead of going against that, the sepoys ended up attacking the British folks. So 3-1-4-2 is a very good combination. Okay. It can be a little tricky, but I think overall this parajumble is manageable, right? I wouldn't say very easy, but medium to difficult. All right. Okay. Let's go to question 2. Yet, even as TikTok delights consumers and advertisers, others believe the Sunny app has a dark side. Again, it's starting with yet. Yet is a contrasting transition word like but, very unlikely to be a starter statement. Let's go to 2. Since launching just 5 years ago, the app has brought a warm glow to its 1 billion plus users, as well as an icy dash of competition to the social media incumbents of Silicon Valley. Now, 2 says the app. So again, as I always say, if you're reading a sentence and a question pops up into your head, what is the app? And if that question is not answered in this statement, that means there has to be a preceding statement. So what app? We don't know. That's not answered in 2. That means it needs a sentence before this, which will introduce the app. Okay. ByteDance, its owner, has its headquarters in China, whose government is addicted to surveillance and propaganda, making it a worrying place for a media app to be placed. Again, its owner, what is its? We don't know. That means it needs a preceding sentence. 1, 2, and 3 are all gone as starter statements. 4 should be a starter statement. With its wholesome dancing and lip syncing videos, TikTok once billed itself as the last sunny corner on the internet. It's a very good introductory statement. It introduces TikTok. Now the question is, or the question might have come into your head, what is it? Ask yourself, is this question answered in the sentence itself? It is. With its whole dancing and lip syncing videos, we're talking about TikTok. Okay, so there is no precedent required. This is a very good starter statement. So we'll write 4 here. Now ask yourself, what is the most obvious pair or link? Okay, so with its wholesome dancing and lip syncing videos, TikTok once billed itself as the last sunny corner of the internet, on the internet. Now there is yet, which is contrasting ideas. Now it says, yet even as TikTok delights consumers and advertisers, others believe the Sunny app has a dark side. All right. Okay, this is fine. 2 says, since launching just 5 years ago, the app has brought a warm glow to its 1 billion plus users. Okay, now ask yourself. 4 says TikTok built itself as the last sunny corner of the internet. 2 is elaborating on that. How was it the last sunny corner on the internet? Why was it built as the last sunny corner on the internet? This happened because the app brought a warm glow to its 1 billion plus users. So this is a positive statement. So this goes very well with 2. Okay, we're still on the positive side of TikTok. So yet will not fit here. Okay, because we're talking about positives. So 4 and 2 will definitely go together. 2 is elaborating on 4. All right. Now we've spoken about the positive. If we put in yet here, so it says yet even as TikTok delights consumers and advertisers, others believe the sunny app has a dark side. Now this goes very well after 2 because 2 talks about bringing a warm glow to its 1 billion plus users, right? And then 1 says even as TikTok delights consumers, so it's related. And the yet fits because we're going in a contrasting. We were talking about positive. Now we're contrasting into negative, the dark side of TikTok. And after that, it says ByteDance, its owner, has its headquarters in China, whose government is addicted to surveillance and propaganda, making it a worrying place. 3 is elaborating on 1. Okay, so 4, 2, 1, 3 is a good combination. So this is how it is. 4 talks about the positive aspect, 2 elaborates on the positive aspect, 1 talks about the negative aspect, 3 elaborates on the negative aspect. 4, 2, 1, 3 is a very good combination. Okay, let's look at question 3. What is more shocking to observe is how often such strokes lead to death. Now again, it says more shocking to observe. That means something before this has to be shocking for us to say more shocking, right? So the sentence before this will say what is shocking, and then we will say more shocking. And also such strokes. What strokes? We don't know. It says such strokes. Too many questions. This can't be a starter statement. When the body temperature rises, our vital organs swell and this causes death. Can this be a starter statement? This can be. Seems like a introductory statement. When the body temperature rises, our vital organs swell and this causes death. Maybe this can be a starter statement. Let's look at 3. One main reason for this is that people underestimate how badly heat can affect the body. This can't be a starter statement because the question is, what is this? That is not answered in the statement. So this won't be a starter statement. Heat strokes have become more common in our country than ever before. Very nice introductory statement. Starter statements typically are generic, broad statements because the author will start with a broad point and then go into specifics, or start with the introductory point and then go into details. Okay, so heat strokes have become more common in our country than ever before. This looks like a good starter statement, but 2 can be a starter statement, 4 can also be a starter statement. This can happen in parajumbles. Not always will you be able to identify the starter statement. In that case, move on to the next step, which is identifying the most obvious link. Ask yourself, what is the most obvious link? Now let's look at this. 1 says, what is more shocking to observe is how often such strokes lead to death. More shocking. Is there a sentence that talks about shocking and then you can talk about more shocking, and also look at such strokes? So the sentence before this should ideally talk about strokes and talk about something shocking, but then 1 is more shocking. So is there a sentence that talks about something shocking? We have a sentence. 4 says heat strokes have become more common in our country than ever before. This can be shocking. What is more shocking to observe is how often such strokes meaning heat strokes, which is coming from 1, lead to death. So 4, 1 seems like a good pair. Remember, we don't have the starter statement yet. Okay, so 4, 1 seems to be a good pair. All right, let's look at 3. One main reason for this is that people underestimate how badly heat can affect the body. Now, what is this? Think critically. This can mean the death in 1. Heat strokes lead to death. 3 is telling you why that happens. One main reason for this is because people underestimate how badly heat can affect the body. So 3 is giving you the reason for 1. 4, 1, 3 seems like a very good combination. Now you have 4, 1, 3. Ask yourself, what are the 2 possible answers? Either you'll have 4, 1, 3, 2, or if you think that 2 is the starter statement, it will be 2, 4, 1, 3. Now let's read 4, 1, 3, 2. So we've read 4, 1, 3. One main reason for this is that people underestimate how badly heat can affect the body. When the body temperature rises, our vital organs swell and this causes death. Okay, so 3 says we underestimate how badly heat can affect the body. 2 is telling you, elaborating on how heat can affect the body. How does heat affect the body? When the body temperature rises, our vital organs swell and this causes death. So 2 elaborates on 3. So 4132 is good. But quickly read 2413. Okay, we have 2, when the body temperature rises, our vital organs swell and this causes death. Okay. Heat strokes have become more common in our country than ever before. 2-4 does not make sense. The flow is very abrupt. 4132, on the other hand, has a very smooth flow. So the answer here is 4132. Okay, so you saw an example where there can be a confusion of a starter statement. In that case, go to the most obvious link, then the second most obvious link, and solve the question. You won't be able to identify the starter statement in every question. All right. Okay, let's look at question 4. Once they reach a high altitude, they manage to travel all over the world. Now, what is they? We don't know. This can't be a starter statement. An expert from the team explained that the bacteria usually lived on the surface of vegetation, such as leaves. Okay, can this be a starter statement? Ask yourself. It says an expert from the team. The question is which team? Team is very general. Which team are we talking about? So chances are there'll be a sentence before this which will introduce that team. Unlikely to be a starter statement. The wind carries them off the surface and into the atmosphere. The question that pops up is what is them or who is them? Again, this can't be a starter statement. A group of researchers were surprised to find, Let's look at sentence 4. A group of researchers were surprised to find that clouds had carried drug-resistant bacteria over a long distance. Can this be a starter statement? This can be a starter statement. Okay. Remember, we've eliminated 1, 2, 3 as starter. 4 seems like a good choice for a starter statement. It's an introductory statement. It's introducing what these group of researchers did and found, and they were surprised to find that cloud had carried drug-resistant bacteria over a long distance. So this can be a starter statement. Let's write 4. That's the only choice that we have for a starter statement. Now ask yourself, what is the most obvious link? Okay, let's look at it. So it says an expert from the team. All right. Now the team, if you put after 2, can be the group of researchers. The question that popped up is who's the team or what is the team? The team is group of researchers. So let's see if 4-2 fits. So a group of researchers were surprised to find that clouds carried over a long distance. An expert from the team explained that the bacteria usually lived on the surface of vegetation such as leaves. And then look at 3. The wind carries them off the surface and into the atmosphere. 4-2-3 makes a lot of sense. Okay, because group of researchers, then team, they start by saying, okay, the bacteria lived on the surface of vegetation such as leaves. And then it says the wind carries them off into the atmosphere. So that explains why cloud carry these, how they reach clouds and clouds carry these drug-resistant bacteria. So 4-2-3 is a good combination. And then followed by, you have once they reach a high altitude, they manage to travel all over the world. They meaning the bacteria. Okay, sorry, they meaning the bacteria. So look at this. The wind carries them off the surface and into the atmosphere. That is 3. Once they reach a high altitude, they manage to travel all over the world. So the flow is very nice. 4-2-3-1 is indeed the answer. Okay, this one is a little tricky. Okay, I mean, you can identify the starter statement, but it might be a little time consuming, a little tricky to identify the right combination. Okay, but follow the strategy and that should help you. Let's look at question 5. This instance highlights how young people from different backgrounds can make important contributions to climate change. This instance, the question is what instance? We don't know, so that means it needs a preceding statement. This can't be a starter statement. Participation in environmental education programs can motivate children to act responsibly towards the environment. This is a good introductory statement. It can be a starter statement. Okay, let's mark it. They were motivated to act in ways that would help the environment, like using a reusable water bottle or refusing to use plastic straws. Now, who's they? We don't know. That means this can't be a starter statement. It needs a precedent. 600 elementary school children from varied social and linguistic groups participated in an ocean pollution education program. This can be a starter statement as well. This is a good introductory statement. Okay, if the paragraph is talking about this initiative. So both 2 and 4 can be starter statements. Okay, we'll move on to the next step. What is the most obvious link? Now, one says this instance highlights how young people from different backgrounds can make important contributions to climate change. Now, what instance? Where is that instance? Let's look at it. It says they were motivated to act in ways that would help the environment, like using a reusable water bottle or refusing to use plastic straws. This is a concrete instance which can explain one. But now again, if you're coming to 3, who is they? They is most likely referring to these elementary school children. So 4-3 is a good pair or a good link. So read that. I won't read the whole thing. 600 children from varied groups participated in this ocean pollution education program. They were motivated to act in ways that would help the environment. So details about that program. Then it says this instance highlights how young people from different backgrounds, because it clearly said in 4 that they came from varied social and linguistic backgrounds. So 4-3-1 seems like a good combination. Now we're left with 2. If you've come up with 4-3-1, you have 2 choices, right? So you can say 2-4-3-1 or 4-3-1-2. You have only 2 choices. So let's read both and let's see which one is the better flow. We'll choose that. 2-4-3-1 says participation in environmental education programs can motivate children to act responsibly towards the environment. 600 elementary school children from varied backgrounds participated, and then it goes on. See, this is a good flow because 2 is more generic than 4. Typically, it doesn't always happen, but typically the starter statements of paragraphs tend to be very generic and broad. Not very generic, tend to be generic and broad. Between 2 and 4, we were confused, right? Which is the starter statement. 2 is more generic than 4 because 2 is in general talking about participation of children in programs. 4 talks about a specific instance. So general to specific is a good flow. 2-4-3-1 seems to be a good flow. But let's do a versus. Okay, this seems fine. Let's read 4-3-1-2. So we have 600 children. We have they are motivated. Then 1 is this instance highlights how young people from different backgrounds can make important contributions to climate change. Let's read 2. Participation in environmental education programs can motivate children to act responsibly towards the environment. Now, see again, the flow is a little abrupt. 1 has clearly told you that young people can make important contributions to climate change. So after saying that, if you come and say generic, very generic statement, participation can motivate children to act responsibly towards the environment, doesn't make sense. 4-3-1 has clearly given you a specific instance where children have acted very responsibly towards the environment. So including a generic statement like 2 at the end is not a great flow, especially when you compare 2-4-3-1, 4-3-1-2, 2-4-3-1 is a better. Okay, so remember that. Okay, typically starter statements are generic, broad statements. Not always. There can be exceptions, right? So look at the question and decide. But typically they'll be broad and generic. Between 2 and 4, 2 was the more generic one. So 2 is a good starter statement, followed by 4, and then 3 and 1. This is a tricky one. Out of all the 5 parajumbles, I think this was the trickiest.